Hi, everybody. Uh, I've been meaning to do this video for a while, and I know it's going to get some negative comments, of course, because it's a conspiracy theory that most of us Beatles fans have been hearing for years and years and years. And I used to really, it used to really annoy me and think these supposed fans would think that Paul McCartney was actually replaced in the mid 60s by another person, Billy Shears or whatever his name is. And lots of rumors, the album covers and everything. I know all about that, and most Beatles fans do. And I've just always thought it was so stupid that even one single Beatles fan or Paul McCartney fan would seriously think that Paul McCartney was replaced. The original Paul McCartney was replaced in the Beatles. But looking at these photos recently, and I've gathered some old photos compared to later photo later photos from 66 onwards, from the late 60s. And you can actually, just with the photos, see that there's something fishy going on. So I would love your thoughts on this. So there's the Beatles, early, probably 1962. And as you can see, they're all, except for Ringo, he's sitting down, of course. But Paul, John, and George are all basically the same height. Let's get to another photo here. There, now they're standing, and of course, Ringo is the shortest of the Beatles. But George, Paul, and John are basically around the same height. Next picture. Actually, in this picture, but it's the perspective too of where they're standing and everything. But Ringo almost looks the same height as uh, Paul, George, and John. But yeah, Paul, George, and John are the very same height. Another one. Once again, Ringo's the shortest, and the other three Beatles are around the same height. They're, one George is leaning, Paul's leaning, so it looks like he's a bit shorter, but you get the idea. Go on to this one. All right. Another really good picture because Paul, John, and George are all the same height, and Ringo's shorter. Same thing, basically the same height. And one more, or a couple more here. Same height. George, John, and Paul are the same height again. Okay, now we get into the later years. So this is 1966, and this was supposedly the year that Paul was replaced. And in this picture, now it could be perspective wise, but Paul certainly looks taller than George, and he's right beside George. Next picture. Now, of course, Ringo's not that short, so I know that John and George are probably standing on a pedestal or whatever, and maybe Paul is too behind them, but I don't think he is. Or if he is, well, we'll see with the upcoming pictures here. Okay, right there. Paul is, look how much taller he is than Ringo, John, and George compared to earlier in the 60s. Another one. Now, they like Paul is standing right beside Ringo, and look how much taller Paul is than Ringo, right? This one, of course, John's laying down on the ground there. Ringo's short like he usually is compared to George, but look how much taller Paul is compared to George. And once again, Paul is standing right beside George. Another one from the rooftop, 1969. Paul is definitely taller than John. I know that he's a lot taller than George in this photo, but it's perspective again, right? But he's right there with John, and Paul is much taller. Once again, another pretty famous picture, but look how much taller. And Paul is standing right beside George. And he's taller than John and George. You have to wonder what's going on here in this world. One more or two. Right there. Look at that. They're all standing beside each other, and Ringo's in the front. Ringo's the shortest. John and George are the same height as always, but Paul is higher up than John or George. Further proof that Paul McCartney was replaced in 1966. So uh, this actually makes me mad. I think I'm done with the Beatles and Paul McCartney or whoever he is. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.